Thank you very much. All right, yeah, I'm back. Okay, so this is a kind of a stripped down SkyThis month. It's the lazy, hazy dog days of summer edition, and we'll elaborate that a little bit more. And it covers 4 weeks from tonight to mid-August of August 14th. And let's go on here. So I thought I'd put this cool background image in. This is a MSE13 is imaged by Steve McKinney using the SLO, the Solar Observatory at the CAO, which is available now for members who want to go up and do some astrophotography in a permanent facility that's rigged up there. You just bring your camera attached to the telescope and the mount and the computer, and away you go. Now, can you spot the galaxy beside the globular cluster? Everybody see it? Can I do a mouse here? It's here, off to the left. All right. So what I'm going to cover tonight is a bit about space exploration news. There's something minor that's happening this Saturday, but we'll cover that in a minute. And then in terms of observing time, we'll cover what's up with the sun, the moon, the planets, and various other things that we can look at. I've got an occultation to mention, and I've got some recommendations for summer stargazing targets. And I will be uploading this content to the RASC-TO.ca website shortly. All right, so just a couple of highlights in terms of rocket launches, and a lot of these are great because you can watch them online, live streaming them. And what we have mainly are ones related to, the first three are related to the ISS, the International Space Station. So we've got the next crew heading up this Saturday to the ISS, and then we have some resupply missions on the 21st and the 31st from Falcon, SpaceX Falcon 9 and Soyuz respectively. And then sometime in the near future, we've got this Virgin Orbit Launcher 1 rocket, and it's where the Boeing 747 takes the vehicle up high in the atmosphere, and then they release it, and then it fires a rocket and heads into orbit. And this will be the second flight, and it's going to deliver some CubeSats to orbit for some clients. And this is a cool photograph taken by Lynn Hilborn in the background of a SpaceX Falcon 9 launch back in 2015. So we've got the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, if you've been living under a rock and haven't heard. This week, liftoff was 50 years ago, I think yesterday. This sort of map of the moon has the red numerals where the various Apollo missions landed. You can see that Apollo 11 is there just in the south edge of Mare Tranquillitatis. And next time you see the moon in a clear night, take a good look at the moon and notice that Mare Tranquillitatis is darker and bluer than the other Maria because it's high in titanium. And that's one of the reasons why it was chosen, along with the fact that it was thought to be relatively smooth and safe for a first try landing on the moon. You want to you can't see the lunar landing sites, the Apollo landing sites, but you can sort of see the craters, the major craters that are nearby. And in this case, you can look for this crater in the lower right, Moltke, or I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but the Apollo 11 landing site is northwest of that crater. And then there are three craters above that to the north: Aldrin, Collins, and Armstrong. Now, this is you can get a second-by-second timeline of the Apollo mission. I thought this one was neat because right about now is when at 7:27 or so p.m. Eastern Time, the crew was returning to the command module. So Buzz and Neil went into the lunar module for a check to check it out, and then they came back to join Mike Collins in the command module for the rest of their preparations for their landing. First steps on the moon were taken at 10:56:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Then Neil quickly grabbed a contingency sample. So if something went horribly wrong and they had to leave the moon, they wanted to have some rocks available to them. So they grabbed that contingency sample within a few minutes. Then 11:15, Buzz joined him on the surface. And by 1:09, they were done. They were finished on the moon. They went back into the LM. And by 1:54, they lifted off. 1:54 p.m., they lifted off. So they had a bit of a rest and then launched back into orbit, where they docked with the command module around 5:30 p.m., all within sort of the first day. And then transfer to Earth burn was completed on the 22nd at 12:58 and splashdown on the 24th at 12:50. So I was really surprised that I didn't recall just how short a time they were on the moon. But anyway, there's lots of information that you can look up. You'll be inundated with it over the next few days. All right. So in terms of observing, the citizen science that they're always asking for help for is the globeatnight.org program, where you monitor the effect of light pollution in your local location, and you go out during the observing period and look up at a key constellation. In this case, it's Hercules for the July-August new moon period. And they want to know just how many of Hercules' stars you can see from your site. Let's see if I can get this to come up. And you download some charts, some star charts that they provide, and you report back to them which chart you think matches most your sky. And they use that information to create light pollution maps. So it's the dog days of summer. Well, not that dog. Traditionally, the dog days of summer were thought to be the period starting around early July and heading into August. And it actually commences with the heliacal rising of Sirius. In other words, Sirius, the star, is rising at the same time as the sun in the morning sky. Sirius, the dog star, was associated in the past with heat and fever and thunderstorms. And in fact, the Greeks thought that they knew Sirius was up in the daytime sky with the sun. They thought the combined effects of the sun plus Sirius were creating this extra heat that we felt in the summertime. I like this quote from Hesiod. Then goats are plumpest and wine the sweetest. Women are most wanton, but men are feeblest during the dog days. He's not very woke, but what can I say? Anyway, when Sirius appeared in the dawn sky with the sun in ancient Egypt, that was the trigger or the signal that the Nile River was beginning to rise and that the floods would soon be arriving. So what I've got is a video here. Let's see if this will play. Here we go. So here we are in ancient Egypt, 3000 BC. You can watch. The sun will rise, and just to the right there, you'll see the star Sirius coming up with Canis Major as well. So they basically came up at the same time. So somebody had the job of getting up before the sun and looking in the southeastern horizon to see when Sirius was arriving. And that's the dog days of summer. All right, let's go on past. This was my backup slide in case it didn't work. And now, observing. Smoke. So a lot of us have been dealing with smoke, obscuring the stars and eliminating some of the dimmer objects. You can get reports on smoke coverage in various astronomy forecasting, weather forecasting apps. There's also a Canadian government weather.gc.ca website that you can get smoke maps. And this is a map of the 48-hour hourly total column of smoke from the ground surface and up. And it's actually an animated map that you can actually play in a video and loop it to watch how the snow. So it looks like we're okay for the moment, but I'm sure the smoke will be returning. So what's up with the sun and moon this month? We've got the two yellow dates are the tonight and the next RAN meeting. So today the sun set at 8:56 p.m. and a month from now it's going to be setting at about 8:23 p.m., which doesn't seem a lot later, but it's actually we're actually doing a little bit better, and I'll come back to that in a sec. And here you've got the phases of the moon, the major phases of the moon. So we just had a full moon on Tuesday and a partial lunar eclipse. Then we have the last quarter on the 24th. The next new moon is the 31st. That's what we're all waiting for. And then we've got first quarter on the 7th and the full green corn moon on the 15th of August. And in case I hadn't hinted strongly enough, these yellow triangles indicate the dates that are probably your best bets for dark sky observing. So following the last quarter and a few days past new moon are the key ones. So plan to be out with the telescope. All right, let's see here. So astronomical twilight. Astronomical twilight is the time of the night when the sun is getting sufficiently low below the horizon that the sky is completely dark. And that's defined to be the time when the sun is more than 18 degrees below the horizon. And obviously the sky will darken in the evening after the sun gets that low, and then in the pre-dawn the sky will start to lighten as the sun starts to rise higher than 18 degrees below the horizon. And here's just a summary of where we're at for the next little while. So today we've got a total of 4 hours and 33 minutes of completely dark skies, aside from the moon and other light pollution and things. But a month from now, we that boosts to 6 hours and 16 minutes. So yay, we'll have a little more. Summer will be ending soon, but we'll have more astronomy time, which is great for us. All right, now, in terms of the planets, I've taken the calendar here and I've just popped on a bunch of the Jupiter events, because Jupiter is front and center right now. So the red numbers, the red times, are the times when the great red spot is transiting the center of Jupiter's disk. You can see that it happens about every 2 or 3 days, or 2 or 3 nights. And I can actually list these in the information I post online, so you can get those numbers if you want. And then the blue times are the sort of mid times of some Jupiter's moons shadow transits. When the 4 Galilean moons, the ones that are large enough to see from Earth, pass in front of Jupiter or between Jupiter and the Sun, their little round black circles will be cast upon the planet, and you can see those in a reasonably modest telescope. So those are, you can see I've got 2, 5, 6 events happening over the next 4 weeks in terms of shadow transits. Then we've got some other things that are happening in terms of conjunctions and groupings with the moon, with near planets and other things. I'll elaborate on those in a couple of minutes. All right, so in terms of where planets are these days, so this is the evening sky right now at 2 a.m. Well, so it's the early wee hours sky. And you can see way off in the right-hand corner, we've got Ceres. That's up there near Scorpius, and it's just setting about that time of the evening, time of night. Then we have Jupiter moving sort of right to left. We've got Jupiter below Ophiuchus, and we've got Saturn up in the teapot of Scorpius. That's the moon in Capricornus tonight. And then we've got Neptune in Aquarius and Uranus over near Pisces. And down here at the lower left, we've got the large asteroid Vesta down near SkyThis. So what's going on with the planets these days? Well, Mercury is going to be back in the last week of July and stay through through the mid-August in a pretty good apparition, or a pretty good appearance in the morning sky for those living in the northern hemisphere. It's going to be at greatest angle from the sun on August 9th, so it's sort of peak visibility around that time. And all the while, its disk will be shrinking in apparent size, and the planet will actually be brightening a little bit. It's actually going to pass the southern edge of the Beehive star cluster on August 17th. That'll be quite low in the east-northeast sky. If people watching online are living at lower latitudes, they'll have a better opportunity to see that event in a darker sky. Venus is not going to be observable this next while because it's approaching conjunction with the Sun on the 17th of August. Mars is rapidly disappearing into the western sunset. Between now and about the first week of August, we have a chance to see it with difficulty, but then it's basically gone. And it will be next to, or 2 degrees from the young crescent moon on August 1st. That'll be a toughie to see that, but you could try. Once the sun is completely below the horizon, get your binoculars and take a look. Jupiter, as I mentioned, Jupiter is a fine target all month. There's lots of red spot appearances and shadow transits. It's near southern Ophiuchus until August 11th, and it's actually dropping a little bit in brightness over the course of the month, and its disk size will be shrinking a little bit as well. But what's cool is that on July 26th, it's going to pass only 4 arc minutes north of the globular cluster NGC 6235. And because you can see in the path of Jupiter here, the red line with the times labeled on it, we're actually heading west, and then Jupiter's going to actually reach a stationary point and head back. So in August, it's going to pass the same globular cluster, but even closer. I think practically pass right through it a few weeks from now. So that's July 26th. Saturn just recently passed opposition, so it's a great object in the sky. It's an all-night target, magnitude around 0 or plus 0.1. It's still low in our summertime sky. It'll be a few years before we get Saturn a little bit higher in our sky near opposition. But it's, as you can see, it's just above the teapot in Sagittarius there. The rings are still fairly wide, but every year the rings are going to be narrowing until 2025, when they'll probably disappear from the Earth's point of view for a few weeks. So stay tuned for that. On August 11th, the moon will be paying it a visit, just about 4 degrees west of it. Uranus is basically a wee hours after midnight target. You can see Uranus in binoculars, sometimes even naked eye if you have a dark sky. Magnitude of 5.8 from a dark sight. To help you find it, you can actually look for the faint naked eye star Chi Ceti, which is in the head of Cetus the whale there, just below the point where the binoculars field of view circle, the red binoculars field of view circle, that little star to the lower left of the moon. That's the one you want to look for. On July 25th, the moon will visit Uranus, but that's never really a great thing because the moon will typically overwhelm those distant planets. And Neptune. So Neptune becomes a late evening target over the next little while. It's a magnitude plus 7.8, so it's certainly within range of good binoculars and telescopes. You want to look about 5 degrees north of the faint naked eye star. So, oh, that's not right. That's a typo. Anyway, what you want to look for is it's heading steadily west towards the star Phi Aquarii, and that's just out of the field of view here. That's this one. There it is up there. Right up in here. And over the course of the next 4 weeks, it'll actually cut its separation from that star in half, roughly. And Ceres, if you want to see a big asteroid, so Ceres, as I said, is situated up near the claw stars of Scorpius. It's actually going to start a retrograde loop, or end a retrograde loop on the 19th of July. And it'll actually be quite close to this faint naked eye star named Lambda Librae, if you want to look for it that way. Pluto, can't see Pluto basically, but it's cool to know that it's there, and if you're interested in knowing where it is, it's just reaching opposition, or just reached opposition a few days ago, but it's peak visibility, but that still means it's very, very dim at magnitude 14. But you can see that sort of hanging out this summer up near Saturn in the constellation of Sagittarius. All right, meteor showers. We've got a meteor shower that's underway starting up right about now. That's the Southern Delta Aquariid meteor shower. It's actually, I'll talk to you a bit more about that in a second. And then usually the big summer event for meteors is the Perseids, but unfortunately the Perseids are going to peak just a few days before the full moon. So that'll spoil the show for us this year. Now what you might want to do though is around the new moon is to keep your eye out for late Southern Delta Aquariids and early Perseids, because the windows for the shower overlap the new moon period. So as far as the Delta Aquariids, it's basically a broad week-long period, peak period, roughly 10 or 15 per hour in a good year, peaking overnight on the 29th and 30th. You want to look in the pre-dawn, ideally, when the radiant is higher and there are more meteors crossing the sky as opposed to being hidden below the Earth's horizon. And it's actually a shower that's better for southerly observers. Basically faint meteors, not a great one to chase after. And so, as I said, the moon is going to be only 4% illuminated at the peak. But the Perseids peak overnight on the 12th, 13th. Normally we expect to get 50 to 70 per hour at the peak. Medium speed meteors from Swift-Tuttle, and we often get bright fireballs. So I remember last summer at CAO, I was there at the Perseid peak, and I was logging some observations through some D-sky objects, and it would be like the lights went on. And I missed the meteor, but it lit up the whole field. And it was just a Perseid meteor shooting overhead. But unfortunately, as I said, the peak's before the full moon, so your best bet is to start watching early and sort of get some before the moon spoils the show. Space station, there's lots and lots of space station passes right now, in the evening and in the morning, and they'll persist until about August 7th. Meridian flares, we start getting them now and again. There's only one Meridian flare, satellite flare predicted between now and the next meeting, and that's August 1st at 9:31 p.m. And it's a really bright one, actually, as predicted. So if you want to know when these are happening, you can check heavensabove.com, the website, put in your location. It'll tell you when to expect them. And two good apps that I like to use are the ISS Detector app for Android and the Sputnik iOS app for Apple iPhones. And I also list them in my skylights every week. One asteroid occultation that I thought might be worth looking at. It's on July 28th at 7:24 UT, which is 3 in the morning. And so you have to be dedicated if you want to go for that one. But it's the magnitude of the star will dip 5.8 magnitudes for 2.3 seconds. And there's the track. You can see the green line is the predicted path of the occultation, and the blue lines are the 1 standard deviation probabilities, and then the red are down from there. So you can see it's certainly in our neighborhood, and it might be worth chasing after that one. All right, so what's worth looking at in the sky these days? So in early August, and about 10 p.m., the constellations that are on the Meridian, and the reason we like the Meridian is because those are the times of the night when those constellations are highest in the sky and being viewed through the least amount of Earth's interfering atmosphere. So at 10 p.m., starting at the southern horizon, we've got Scorpius, Sagittarius, and Scutum. And then for best results, you want to look through the least amount of air, and those are the constellations that are within that circle. So that's less than 1.5 air masses. So it's anything within that circle is being seen through less interfering atmosphere. And those will include these other constellations: Ophiuchus, Serpens, Hercules, Lyra, Draco, and Ursa Minor. Then 2 hours later at midnight, same situation. Now we've got Corona Australis in the south, and Sagittarius, Scutum, Serpens, Cauda, and now we're picking up Delphinus and Aquilius and some of these other constellations as well. And by 2 a.m., we've got Microscopium in the south, which I haven't looked at, but might be worth it if you had a nice dark southern horizon and a low horizon. And then up in the best air mass, the lowest air mass ring, we've got Delphinus, Western Pegasus, Cygnus, Lacerta, and Cepheus. So when you're out doing you're searching for your deep sky objects, I want you to not be too fixated on the Messiers, because there's an excellent alternative set of objects that you can look for, and those are in the Observer's Handbook on page 318. They're called the RASC Finest NGC objects, and it's one of actually several lists of objects that are in the Observer's Handbook, but these are sort of probably your next best bet after the Messiers. And many of those objects are actually as good and as easy to see as the Messiers themselves. And so what I've got here is a list, which I'll post, and you can also find it in the handbook. And the ones that are in white text are ones I'm going to highlight for the next couple minutes. So let me just bring on to those. So in Aquila, and this is, you can see that we've got Altair in the upper left here, and then you've got the two wings of Aquila, the eagle, extending to the lower right and then vertically upward. And the little highlight there is the Snowball Nebula. And what I like about the Snowball Nebula is it's actually a really cool target. It's a ghostly ring in a medium-large telescope. It would be a great imaging target as well. And it's kind of midway or partway between the Ring Nebula in size and the Dumbbell Nebula in size. So it's bigger than the ring, smaller than the dumbbell. So that's a great one you can chase. Then we've got the Foxhead Cluster. The Foxhead Cluster is an open cluster kind of just a little bit west of the northern wing of Cygnus there. You can see where it's highlighted. And in a telescope, it actually reminded me of a nebula inside an open cluster. But when you magnify that little nebula, it turns into many, many dim stars. And the reason it's called the Foxhead, and I wrote in my notes that I thought it looked like a dog's muzzle, and then when I later looked up my more information, it said it's called the Foxhead, and that made sense to me. So that's a cool one to look at. Then you've got the Blinking Planetary. A lot of people have seen the Blinking Planetary. That's up near the elbow in the northern wing of Cygnus. And what's great about this one is that when you use averted vision on this object, when you stare right at it, the central star appears, but when you look to the side, the envelope around it, the blue envelope, pops into view more accurately. And you can go back and forth, and have the envelope disappear and appear, disappear and appear. Hence its nickname. And finally, don't overlook the Veil Nebula. So the Veil Nebula is down here near the elbow, the southern elbow of Cygnus's wing. And the easiest way to find the Veil Nebula is to point your telescope at the naked eye star 52 Cygni, which you can see is down here. And just center your finder scope or your telerad on that, and then you're already seeing one edge of the Veil Nebula passing right through it. So there's 52 Cygni. This stretch of the nebula is very obvious in a medium or large telescope. And then if you start panning around, you can pick up the other sections. And the thinking is that this is a tattered remnant, a tattered supernova remnant. Perhaps even more than one, kind of sort of combined together. So this one is actually enhanced by an O3 filter or an ultra-high contrast filter, nebula filter, if you happen to have one handy. Finally, a couple double stars to think about in Lyra. Basically, whoops, come back. Where's my, doesn't want to go. Well, so we've got the double-double up here near Vega. It's about a finger's width away from Vega. Then you've got all four corners of the parallelogram are double. Some are naked eye double, some are binocular double, and some are telescopic. And then check out this one, HIP 92833, or HR 7140. It's actually Albireo-ish. It's a nice color double in Lyra. To check it out. All right, so that's it for me. This is another picture from the SLO. This is an early test image that Richard Sewards took back in March using the SLO telescope at Messier 101. And I hope to see you out. Thanks. Questions?
Any questions for Chris? No questions. Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation, Chris. With regards to the Veil Nebula, you were saying a moderate to large telescope. How small would a moderate, would it have to be?
Well, it depends on your sky conditions. Certainly an 8-inch would be no problem if you had an 8-inch job or something like that. And a wider field telescope is actually best, or even a wide field. Yeah, under good conditions, you could probably use a large refractor or a 6 or 8-inch Dobsonian would do it for you. You can go to a star party and find somebody that's got a 12 or a 10 or a 16. I know somebody has a 16 that's been coming out to Glen Major. That would be a really good option as well.
Chris, I have a question for you. You were mentioning air masses when looking up at the sky. I guess the definition of one air mass is the zenith, and that's it?
Yeah, one air mass would be the zenith, and then I think it's around 30 or 40 degrees up would be 2. They start doubling. They start going up by 2, 3, 4 as you get lower to the horizon. Yeah. Very good. Thank you.
No more questions?
Okay, well, thank you.
Great job, Chris. Thank you.